Pinnacle of Power. As I'd mentioned in a previous section, this is just a consolidation of all of the level 200 quests for every class. As always, this isn't to say that every class reaches level 200 at the same time, but it's easier to just have them all lumped together in the same section, since there's no way of knowing where their absolute placement is in the chronology. The only exception to this is Shade's level 200 quest, which I already covered in his class story section, since it would create a continuity error if it were placed after Heroes of Maple, because it has Mercedes not recognizing him. There are several references to a new power awakening in each of the classes, which is just the hero's echo skill for Maple World classes and the exclusive spell skill for Grandis classes. While not every class has an explicit mention of them awakening with a new power, they still get the skills regardless. Explorer. The explorer grew to reach the highest level of power and soon heard the statue of the goddess calling to him in Orbis. There, the goddess spoke to them and bestowed her blessing upon them in order to help them protect Maple World. Soon after, the priests in Leafree recognized the explorer's strength and gifted them the Red Draco, a mount which only gave its loyalty to those whom were strong enough. Author's note: the goddess mentioned in this quest isn't the Maple goddess. The goddess of Maple World was created for the Explorer storyline in the Red Update, but there was always references to some sort of deity called the goddess, even before the Big Bang update. It seems that the people of Orbis worshipped someone named Minerva, who's depicted as a nymph in all of her statues. The pre-Big Bang lore suggests that characters like Minerva and Lakeless, both of whom instigate various party quests in the game, are part of the goddess race. But despite Minerva appearing as a nymph in her statues, all of the members of the goddess race have identical human NPC sprites, with the only difference being their color palettes. The goddess race has literally never once come up in the main story, which is why I was surprised that the pre Big Bang quest was left untouched in the Destiny revamp instead of being reworked into the Goddess of Maple World lore. I have this headcanon that the Orbis goddess is the nymph form of the Goddess of Maple World. During our 5th job advancement, we see that the Goddess of Grandis has 3 different forms, each being one of the 3 major races in Grandis: the Nova, the Flora, and the Anima. I like to think that the goddess of Maple World can also present herself in a different form for each of their races, such as humans, fairies, etc. If I had free reign on deciding the lore myself, I would retcon the Great Spirit whom Mercedes speaks with during her job advancement into the elf form of the goddess of Maple World. Cygnus Knights. Cygnus reached out to the knight and told them that despite Shinsu having left a rev, the divine bird had told her about the knight's exploits of strength. She invited the knight to a rev where she reminisced about how clueless they had been during their first days of training in a rev, and how they had now become on par with the chief knights. She then explained that she and Shinsu were both in agreement to have them become the 6th chief knight. She told the knight that they were a star in a world of darkness. When the sun shone, the stars hid, unneeded, but when darkness bloomed, as it did with the threat of the Black Mage, the stars became their guide. Cygnus then asked the knight to visit her more often, as the Rev felt lonely with Shinsu gone. Author's note: something that I thought the Ignition revamp would fix was Cygnus promoting us to Chief Knight at both 4th job and at level 200. They did update the dialogue for this quest, which makes it even weirder that they didn't catch this. Mihail. Author's note: while Mihail obviously reaches level 200 before the Cygnus Knight, this quest is explicitly set after Cygnus's awakening, as Shinsu is said to be in Leafree during the quest. Shinsu's voice reached out to Mihail, telling him that he had proven his place besides the Empress as her protector. She explained that though the light inside of him had grown from a spark to a brilliant star, there was still something that he needed to learn about the connection between the Knight of Light and Shinsu's teardrop. Through her powers, Shinsu summoned Mihail to her hidden resting spot in Rev, where she began telling him the truth. She explained that before the invasion of the Black Mage, when Empress Arya had still lived, Faroud had come to Arev in order to make a request. He had shown her the Seal Stone of Arev, which he had explained held the power to restore the world as a failsafe in the event that the Black Mage succeeded in destroying it. With the Seal Stone imbued with the power of time, Faroud had hoped that they would be able to restore Maple World to the way that it was, and so he explained that he had been hiding several all over the world, with the one that he had been presenting to Shinsu being meant to fur a rev. Author's note: this flashback confirms that Frood had distributed the Steel Stones before Phantom joined the heroes, since Arya is still alive at this point in time. Shinsu explained that she had accepted the Seal Stone from Faroud and agreed to become its keeper. She then explained that soon after, Empress Arya had lost her life to Lotus and Orchid, who had also killed many of the Noblesse, as well as her protector, the Knight of Light, and had destroyed his soul shield. In the tragedy, however, the light had still persisted in the form of the Knight of Light's protege, who had taken on his master's mantle as the next Knight of Light. As Shinsu had grown too weak to protect the Seal Stone without a living empress to claim her power, she had instead reforged the Soul Shield and had placed the gemstone inside of it. Having shed many tears for Arya on that sad day, Shinsu had also given the Seal Stone a new name, Shinsu's Teardrop, in memory of Arya's death. Since then, it had been the Knight of Light's duty to guard the Seal Stone until Chromiel's death had broken the chain. However, centuries later, a new empress had returned to lead Erev, with Mihail's actions securing the Seal Stone's safety as well. Mihail told Shinsu that with or without the Seal Stone, he was still the Knight of Light, and that he was still committed to protecting the Empress, Erev, and Maple World. Shinsu was pleased by his declaration and sent him back to Erev, where Cygnus gave him a token made from Chromiel's broken soul shield. Author's note: the token is his level 200 medal. This quest actually made me really like the idea of Mihail being the adversary. The Knight of Light has always protected the Seal Stone of Arev, and after Mihail relinquishes the Seal Stone to Cygnus, it's poetic that it still finds its way back to him after Cygnus uses it to revive him during Black Heaven. The Seal Stone goes from being cradled within the Soul Shield to within Mihail's own soul, allowing him to serve as its protector, or as a protector of not only the Seal Stone, but all of the people whose hopes were channeled through it. Resistance. Headmaster Ferdy contacted the Resistance member and thanked them for their dedication and hard work since the start of their special training. He then asked them to come back to Edelstein for one last session. There, Ferdy reminisced with them about how they had been a clueless rookie at the start of their training. However, Ferdy told them that since then they had proven themselves time and time again. Though they had nothing left to learn from special training, he reminded them that they still had much to learn, not from a teacher, but from the world. As thanks, he taught them a powerful skill to aid them until the day that Edelstein would be freed. Xenon. Claudine reached out to Xenon and asked him to return to Arev. There, the Resistance instructors gave him a formal welcome party to make up for their awkward first meeting. Demon. The demon soon returned to full power and vowed to destroy the Black Mage, believing that it was his responsibility to ensure that no one would ever experience the pain that he had, as he felt his desire to protect and atone for his atone for his sins. New power flooded into Iran. Maha reached out to Iran through their mental link and asked her to return to Rien. There he told her that though she still didn't have all of her memories, she was worthy of receiving his blessing, which signified the full return of her powers. Soon after, Maha told her that he could sense an incredible force trailing her, and asked if there was someone extremely powerful with her. Aran returned to Rien, and Maha immediately recognized that the energy was coming from Reiko, who had grown stronger as a silver wolf alongside its master. He told her that the wolf was ready for its awakening, but when Aran told him that she didn't remember how to do it, Maha used his powers to awaken the wolf for her. He then told her that Reiko was the strongest wolf in history, even stronger than the one that she had ridden centuries ago. He explained that the wolf that she had ridden in the past was also called Reiko, and that he had thought that she had given him the same name deliberately. Evan. Mur soon felt Evan's soul growing stronger and resonated with his own. Through the power of the Spirit Pact, they gained a new power that signified that they had become the true successors of Faroud and Afrian. Author's note: before the Heroes of Maple update, Evan and Faroud would meet Afrian, who would explain that Onyx dragons were only at half of their strength when the bond between Master and Dragon wasn't in harmony, although their power would skyrocket when they do grow in sync. He tells them that they're a lot stronger than he and Frood were at their age, which shows just how tightly they had bonded. He then gives them the hero's echo skill, explaining that their strong spirits qualify them to use it, just as Faroud once had. Mercedes. Mercedes was summoned by the Great Spirit, who bestowed her blessing to signify that Mercedes had returned to her full power. Her return to strength also meant that Sylvidia grew much stronger. Author's note: they make no reference to any of the elves awakening after she returns to full power, which is a bit dumb when it was literally said that the elves would awaken after she regains her full strength. If they ever end up revamping her storyline, I wish that we'd see a few more elves awaken. This plot point gets resolved in her aftermath cutscene, which shows all of the elves stopped being popsicles after the Black Mage's death. Phantom. In celebration of Phantom's return to full power, Gaston ordered a new car for Phantom called Royce, which was an upgraded version of his old car, Rolls. Soon after, Cygnus asked Phantom to visit her in a rev and told him that while organizing the things left behind by Empress Arya, she had found Arya's diary and that she had felt that Phantom ought to have it. Though most of the diary had been damaged, Phantom learned that Arya had also resented the selfish royals of Maple World and had been glad to hear whenever Phantom targeted them. He was surprised to learn that she had wished to meet him, but as a Rev had no real treasures to offer, she had made up the rumor about Skya in order to draw him out. Luminous. Lania called Luminous back home, where she jokingly asked him why he only came when she invited him. Before he could respond, she laughed and told him that she already knew that it was because he was on an important mission. She then explained that she had been remembering some old memories from when she had been Lucia and how they would stroll together through harmony. Shade. Author's note: as I've mentioned, this was already covered in a previous section, since it chronologically takes place before Heroes of Maple. Kaiser. The spirit of the former Kaiser reached out to Kyle and asked him to come to the Great Temple. There he congratulated Kyle on achieving the rank of Grand Kaiser even faster than he had. He then bestowed his blessing upon Kyle, granting him the final piece of Kaiser's power. Angelic Buster. Escalade congratulated Tyr on reaching full power, and Tyr thanked Escalade for helping her, even in spite of his lechery. Escalade then offered to form a final contract with her, which would create the ultimate dragon bond between them. He also confessed that her transformation had nothing to do with accessing his powers, but that he simply did it because he thought that Tyr looked attractive in her outfit. Tyr laughed and told him that though she had already figured it out long ago, she had learned to accept it, and that she even liked how cute her outfit was. With that, they formed their final contract, allowing Tyr to wield even greater power as Angelic Buster. Adena. Through her vigorous training, Adena felt her power getting stronger. However, she still felt as though there were powers still inside her that had yet to be unlocked. By concentrating on her past experiences, new powers flooded into her body as she felt herself growing stronger through those experiences. Cain. Yen contacted Cain and told him that they had found a lead on someone who could take care of the choker on Ilin. However, he explained that Ilin had rushed off to meet with them before the shadow dealers could vet the source. Believing it to be a trap, Cain rushed into the old Dracus headquarters where the meeting was supposed to take place. There, he found Ilin dead on the roof. To Cain's shock, he saw Luska approaching him silently. Aghast, he asked her how she could still be alive after she had died in his arms, but Luska ignored his questions and merely identified him as her target. Cain realized that her memories had been stolen once again, but Luska corrected him and explained that she herself had requested for them to be erased, as it was the only way to escape death. She told him that her past self had been too weak to survive, and so she had killed her in order to grow stronger. Author's note: I'm sorry, but the old Luska can't come to the phone right now. Why? Oh, 'cause she's dead. Cain reminded her that they were family, and that she had made the ultimate sacrifice to protect him. However, Luska interrupted him and explained that she already knew that she had died for Cain and asked if he would die for her. When Cain told her that he obviously would, she asked him to prove it and raised her sword to attack him. Suddenly, Dr. Y appeared, or arrived, to stop her and told her that would do, congratulating her for passing his condition check. Luska ordered him to move, but Dr. Y told her that he couldn't allow her to kill Cain, as her post-mortem malice condition was an entirely new field of study, and that Cain was as essential as she was to studying it. After Luska walked away, Cain demanded to know who Dr. Y was and what he had done to his sister. Dr. Y responded that for her own personal reasons, Luska had requested the change in order to become stronger. He then told him that between Luska, who had abandoned her past, and Cain, who had chased it, he wondered which sibling would come out stronger. Ilium. X told Ilium that something was happening to the Elder Crystal and suggested that they move back to Sanctuary. There, a sudden flash of light emanated from the crystal and imbibed a new power into Ilium, marking him as the true owner of the Elder Crystal. Ark. As Ark returned to full power, he felt the Spectre's power flowing through his arm. The pain knocked him unconscious and transported him to the abyss. There, the Spectre asked Ark whether he had enjoyed using its powers, claiming that he was much stronger because of it. It explained that the intoxication of bloodlust on the battlefield was what sustained it. Ark asked the Spectre why it had summoned him, to which the Spectre told him that as they were now one, it grew stronger when Ark's power grew. Because of this, the Spectre finally believed that it was ready to confront him, so that it could seize control of his body in order to prevent Ark from endangering both of their lives, as Ark constantly forced them into dangerous situations that could kill them both. Ark then faced off against the Spectre and managed to best it. The Spectre was surprised by Ark's strong will and decided to back off, though it promised its return that, that it promised to return the next time Ark's will wavered. As Ark returned from the abyss, he felt a new power and a vague memory returning to him, though he couldn't fully recall the details. Author's note: this is likely a memory that he gained of the abyss and the infinite knowledge inside of it. Adele. As Adele continued regaining her powers, she grew more confused and wondered why she had been called to take up her blade after having spent so long in the void. She decided to return to the Knight statue in Restonia for answers, but the statue remained silent. Suddenly, she saw a paper airplane sailing down to her and opened it to find a letter that asked her to meet atop the tallest spire at the bell's sixth toll. There, she encountered Veronica and several High Flora soldiers. Veronica reminded Adele that at the masquerade ball she had promised that they would meet again. Now that Adele recognized her and had returned to full strength, Veronica invited her to face off again. Suddenly, Adele found herself being dragged back into the void, where she felt that magic that had carved her soul into 107 pieces. There, she found the 108th sliver of her soul, which told Adele that it was her fate to stay in the void for eternity as punishment for having failed her lord. Adele then raised her blades and fought the phantom, but no matter how many times she defeated it, the other Adele told her that her imprisonment was the only way to atone. Adele told the phantom that she couldn't stay, as she had made an important promise. However, the void began wiping away her memories, and she soon discovered that she couldn't recall what the promise was. As she collapsed on the ground, the pendant that Jerome had given her clattered on the floor. Seeing the pendant, Adele was able to recall memories of Jerome and the oath that they had sworn together. Suddenly, the fountain's voice rang through the darkness and triggered another of Adele's hidden memories, allowing her to recall that it was Veronica, not herself, who had betrayed the God King. She then used all of her strength to pull herself out of the void. Veronica was shocked and angered that Adele had freed herself and used her magic to deflect Adele's blades. Laughing that Adele was still no match for her, she declared that her business was over. Just then, Jerome arrived and Veronica told him to look after Adele before vanishing. Adele and Jerome then went to the fountain, where she told him the full truth behind the death of the God King. Adele warned Jerome that Darmor was committed to unearthing the ancient power that Jerome's key unlocked, and asked him to be careful. They then parted ways, leaving Adele to wonder whether she had unearthed all of the memories because of the mysterious statue. She then sensed that its light had awakened a new power within her, granting her greater strength. Author's note: the way that this game frames Adele's realization about the events on how the former God King died was honestly really stupid. Throughout all of her flashbacks, we see that the God King was a terrible person, and even Adele herself recalls feeling a great deal of confusion about whether her oath is more important than the lives of countless innocents, to the point that she was imprisoned for refusing to follow him. But the first and only thing that Adele cares about throughout her whole story is whether she had betrayed the God King or not, and when she breathed a sigh of relief that she had protected him until the very end, I had to stop and do the blinking guy gif at my screen. For the entirety of this quest, I was waiting for her to put two and two together, but the way that the game framed it, they make it seem like it's a point of celebration that Adele chose to go down fighting to protect a genocidal maniac. To be honest, I don't think that Adele had even a tiny bit of character development throughout her entire story. All that her storyline did was establish her as an extremist who might have had some moral qualms about having to commit ethnic cleansing herself, but when it comes down to it, she was perfectly willing to defend Space Elf Hitler, knowing full well what he was able to do. Despite her cute interactions with Jerome, where she starts believing in him and his mission to help people, the majority of her quests after level 30 are the same repetitive thing, where a Grandis class makes a cameo and tells her that she has to pick a side, with literally nothing coming out of it. Her class story culminates in her rejoicing that she defended a fascist tyrant with her last breath, and at no point does she ever stop and reflect on what that must have said about her as a person. You'd think that we would have a scene at the end of this where she resolves to atone for what she did, or even her realizing that an oath to a leader isn't as important as her duty to protect the people, but nope, she was just going on without having learned a single thing. It really makes me question what the writers were hoping to do with this character. I'm sure that they might have intended to make her relationship with the God King be more like I can fix him if I can only just talk to him, except they forgot that they had already had her talk to him, and he threw her in prison. The whole coup that Darmor led against her father, God King, seemed like it happened when they were in the cusp of war and there was no chance left to change the God King's mind. The writers might not have intended it, but the fact still remains that they made it so that when push comes to shove, when the only choices were to stop the God King or allow him to destroy Grandis, Adele chose to defend a fascist over countless millions, with her not even feeling an ounce of regret about it, which is a bit disturbing when she's supposed to be the protagonist. Kali, oh boy, Kali. Niall contacted Kali and explained that with the help of some new investigations, or new investigators, they had increased their scope of investigations to outside Eremos. Because of this, he told Kali that they had come across someone interesting and asked her to meet with them. In Tulin City, Kali and Niall met with Cain, who explained that he had heard her story from Niall. Niall told Kali that Cain was interested in Epsilon, who had the power to extract things. Cain revealed that in Tulin City he had met someone, Dr. Y, who had the same power to extract. A surprised Kali asked Cain what kind of things Dr. Y had extracted, to which Cain explained that he could extract everything memories, malice, and even death. Upon hearing that Dr. Y could extract death, Kali explained that everything that Epsilon had extracted had been absorbed into him, and that regardless of what it would still have an effect on him, even if it were to quickly store it somewhere else. Or even if he were to quickly store it somewhere else. She told Cain that she had found it hard to believe that Epsilon would save someone by extracting death, knowing that he would have to risk dying himself. Cain explained that he believed that rather than extracting death itself, Dr. Y had been extracting the damage which had led to the death itself, adding that he hadn't seen the revived person die with his own eyes. Author's note: this is very clearly a retcon, because Leska's choker falling off was a very clear intention that she was supposed to be dead, and Cain even says that Leska had died in his arms. I know that Dr. Y says something about extracting death itself potentially being too difficult in the original KMS script for Cain's story, but the whole thing honestly feels too contrived for it to have been planned. I'm pretty sure that the reason why they explicitly retconned this is because many people complained about Dr. Y being far too broken, since truly reviving someone in a way that's more than just summoning their souls like Hilla is supposed to be a transcendent level power. Although it's highly likely that Darmor gave Epsilon part of his transcendence powers, similar to what he did with Ka Ling in Shangri-La, I think that the writers wanted to add some definite limits to the kind of powers that Epsilon has. Holly told Cain that Epsilon had extracted life force and magic, which had made her believe that his goal was to become strong enough to challenge Darmor, the God King himself. However, she noted that if Dr. Y was the same person as Epsilon, then it meant that the purpose of his extracting wasn't simply to live longer or to become stronger. Cain agreed, adding that Dr. Y's goals wouldn't be so simple. He also pointed out that Dr. Y wouldn't need something like someone else's memories to grow stronger. As they were facing many uncertainties, Holly asked Niall to keep investigating. Meanwhile, Dr. Y arrived in Eremos and removed his mask, revealing Epsilon's face underneath. Ho Young. Ho Young traveled to the Temple of Time, where the final fiend awaited them. After Tauti consumed it, his full power and original form returned. As Ho Young cautiously asked what came next, the ground began rumbling, and Tauti told Ho Young that they weren't alone. Ho Young asked if it was another fiend, which Tauti confirmed, though he admitted that it wasn't one that he had consumed, and that it felt strangely familiar. Unexpectedly, Ka Ling appeared before them and told them that she was a collector of monsters, and that she had her sights set on a particular monster in the possession of someone else. Ho Young realized that she was referring to him, and told her that Tauti had already swallowed the monster that she had wanted. Colleen grew irritated and told him that it was Tauti himself that she was after, claiming that he deserved someone who wouldn't hesitate to unleash his destructive powers. However, Ho Young refused to hand Tauti over, claiming that despite Tauti's destructive powers, he was still Ho Young's friend, which surprised Tauti. Frustrated, Colleen used a mysterious power to create a demonic hand that engulfed Ho Young and began draining his life force. Tauti asked Ho Young why he didn't just let her take him, to which Ho Young replied that he couldn't afford to let Colleen seize control over his destructive power. He asked Tauti to help him, but Tauti explained that he was still bound inside of Ho Young, and so he couldn't use his powers against her. However, he recognized that Ka-Ling was using another one of the four perils against them, and told Ho Young that he could cancel out its power, though he couldn't guarantee that Ho Young would survive in the process. Nevertheless, Ho Young told him to do it, and so Tauti used his powers to free them from Ka-Ling's grasp. However, Ka-Ling recognized that Ho Young was barely able to stand after Tauti had used powers, and so she decided to press her advantage and move to attack. To everyone's surprise, however, Ho Young's master appeared as an astral projection and blocked Ka-Ling's attacks. Ka-Ling was shocked and enraged that a true sage had appeared. She declared that she could easily defeat his astral projection, which Ho Young's master used his powers to teleport Ho Young to the hermitage. After Ho Young awoke, he asked his master what he had been doing there. His master explained that before leaving on his journey, he had implanted a copy of his soul inside of Ho Young in case his apprentice ran into real trouble. Ho Young asked his master where he was, which his master explained that it was confidential information. He apologized for leaving Ho Young to fend for himself, but he explained that there was a great darkness that loomed over the outside world. He then asked Ho Young whether he would choose to leave the hermitage to face that darkness, or to remain safe inside. After considering it, Ho Young told him that he couldn't stand by while people were in danger anymore. His master was pleased by Ho Young's answer, though he added that their time was growing short before his apparition would disappear. Before he left, he gave Ho Young a special spellbook and told him to give Tauti his best regards. After he left, Tauti revealed that Ho Young's master was actually Tai Yu, the legendary sage who had sealed away the four perils. Ho Young was awed to know that his master was the same sage whom he had looked up to, though Tauti was irritated to know that Ho Young was the apprentice of the man who had sealed him away. He begrudgingly agreed to continue traveling with Ho Young, as a small part of him had secretly grown fond of the boy. Ho Young then opened the spellbook and read that what his master had written. I look forward to the day that I get to hear all of the tales of your journey, and that his master had also included a strange spell that augmented Ho Young's power. Laura. Through Laura's adventures, she was able to strengthen her connection to the spirits. Suddenly, she sensed a strange energy emanating from the bell, sending her into the memories of someone in pain. She witnessed a tormented shade lamenting that it couldn't feel anymore. The shade berated itself by asking if it had really thought that someone who could make the bell ring would appear, answering its own question by saying that it hadn't. The shade told itself that though they may have won the war, they had been unable to preserve themselves in the process. It then noted that having humanity meant having empathy for others, then it wasn't human anymore. Just then, another shade appeared to console the tormented shade, and told it not to think like that, promising that they could still do it. However, the tormented shade pointed out that the consoling shade's eyes had changed, with several rings appearing around the shade's iris. The tormented shade realized that the contamination had reached the consoling shade as well. As the consoling shade began to cry in hopelessness, the tormented shade noted that it was right after all, and that their plan had failed. It lamented that the bell would never ring, and that they would be devoured by the despair that they had created. However, it spoke aloud that if someone who could make the bell ring really did appear, then it requested that they help make them all see why they should continue to believe. Suddenly, Taiyu broke through the dark memory and noted that it seemed that someone had broken their promise. Laura immediately sensed a holy power inside of Taiyu and wondered who he could be. Taiyu told Laura to step aside, claiming that she could not withstand the power of the bell. However, Laura replied that she had a message to give him and explained that she had made the bell ring. She then addressed the shades and told them that though she didn't know what it was what it was that had hurt them so badly, she vowed that she would save them from it. Taiyu then took Laura back to safety and admonished her for her recklessness, explaining that she had been trapped inside a memory filled with hatred, and that the power of the bell could have gone sideways and consumed her. Laura apologized and asked who he was, to which Taiyu revealed that he was just a simple wanderer, and that he had come from the realm of the sages. He then asked her why she had done something so reckless, to which Laura explained that the bell had spoken to her, and that it had felt incredibly sad. She added that in the depths of all that despair she had sensed definite sadness, and that she hadn't wanted to turn her back on the shades. Upon hearing her explanation, Taiyu realized that her innocence was likely why the bell had responded to her in the first place. Realizing that Taiyu knew about the bell, she asked him to tell her who had created it. Taiyu explained that according to legend, the bell had been created by the sinners. Laura recalled that the sanctuary writings had mentioned the sinners when she had discovered the bell. One bright day, this bell will ring to wash away the sinner's wrongs. Taiyu then explained that the sinners had committed an irredeemable sin, for which they had been imprisoned in the realm of the sages. Laura asked what sin they had committed and who had imprisoned them. Taiyu replied that the sinners had committed the crime of forsaking their humanity, and that they had chosen to imprison themselves in the realm of the sages as atonement. He added that the bell was their only chance to cleanse their sins, though many had given up hope that it would ever ring. Author's note: the Shangri-La storyline confirms that the sinners are the elders of Grandis, the war that had tormented Shade, or the war that the tormented Shade spoke about was the war to defeat the ancient gods eons ago. The elders had created Odium as a laboratory where they conducted experiments to create adversaries as weapons to destroy the gods. These experiments were atrocities that took away the adversaries' free will and humanity, stripping them of their memories, their love, and their goddess, reducing them to empty shells devoid of anything except a desire to fulfill their given purpose. This lack of humanity that the adversary suffered from was known as contamination, which slowly began spreading to the elders themselves. In order to stave off the contamination, the elders created the bell mysticant, which would only ring for someone with an immeasurably pure heart. When no one could make the bell ring, the elders sequestered themselves in Shangri-La, the realm of the sages, in order to stop their corruption from spreading. Before they left, they gave the bell to Laura's village in order to find someone who could make the bell ring and wash away their sins. At the end of the Shangri-La storyline, you also learn that the memories that Laura had viewed in this quest belonged to Osel, the horse anima elder. Laura told Taiyu that if there were people out there who saw her as a ray of hope, then she wanted to become that hope for them, and responded to their faith. Upon seeing that the bell had turned warm in response to Laura's words, Taiyu was amused that she was just as incorrigible as his apprentice. When Laura asked who his apprentice was, Taiyu told her that he was a wanderer as well, and that she would likely cross paths with him one day. He then decided to take his leave and allowed her to keep custody of the bell. Laura asked him if she would meet him again, which Taiyu told her that they would, once she had gained more skills with the bell. After leaving, Taiyu noted to himself that his interference was sure to cause an uproar in the realm of the sages, though he admitted that there was plenty of blame to go around and shook his head at the old codgers there. 0. Author's note: 0 doesn't have a level 200 quest. Kinesis. 3 Moon reached out to Kinesis in order to congratulate him for achieving mastery over his powers. To commemorate the occasion, he gave Kinesis a blessing imbued with the power of the Guardians of Mapleworld, hoping that it would aid Kinesis in their journey.